Hello, everyone. Welcome to this second meetup for agents and counselors across the Americas. Today, we will delve into UCAS, Admissions Reforms, an overview session. I am Patricia Santos, Education and Insights Hub Manager in the British Council, working in the Americas, and I will be your host for today's session. We also have the presence of Maura Leão, Director of International Relations of BELTA, the Brazilian Educational and Language Travel Association, which is our partner delivering this meetup for agents and counselors. Maura is also the Vice President of FELCA, the Federation of Language and Education Consultant Associations for Latin America. I'll pass on the microphone to Maura now to say a few welcome words. Please, Maura.
Yes, thank you so much, Patricia, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here with you and to have this partnership with BELTA. So we have the knowledge of sending the students to the UK, and this information coming from you is very important for our work and for our students. We want to send more students to the UK so they have a great opportunity of a great education. So thank you so much for the partnership with the association, and I welcome Samantha and her team to give us all the information she can so we can provide the best information to our students. Welcome, Samantha.
Thank you, Maura. Just before we commence, let's just establish some protocols to ensure this session is productive and it goes smoothly for everyone enjoying this session. So as you can see, it's being recorded and you'll be able to receive the link after this session. We will share the link with all the registered participants after this session. It's available with interpretation to Portuguese and Spanish, so you can see the language button down to your screen. You can simply select the language you prefer. We encourage you to actively participate, send your questions along the session, and we will address them in the Q&A moment. Feel free to ask in English, Portuguese, and Spanish, and the interpreters will help us with the interpretation. Following UCAS presentation, we will have the moment to ask questions to Sam and her team. So you can just raise your virtual hand to pose questions directly opening your video and microphone, or you can just type in the chat. And we will facilitate this to Sam to answer these questions. And I also would like to highlight that the British Council has a safeguarding policy. That means we encourage you and anyone attending to our events to bring to our attention any harmful, any inappropriate or violent behavior that occurs in our activities. This is part of our safeguarding policy, and you can contact us through the email americasce-safeguarding@britishcouncil.org. Now, I finally introduce you to our guest speaker. We are honored to have with us Sam Sykes. She's Customer Success Manager. Sam has worked within operations at UCAS for 7 years and leads a team who supports those advising applicants through the admission processes, such as counselors, teachers, and advisors. Sam is one of the UCAS experts in customer journey and a regular host for many of the UCAS broadcast streams. She's a qualified teacher, and prior to joining UCAS, she worked in the UK in secondary education. We also have the presence of Becca Horsley, Customer Success Partner International. Becca's role is primarily focusing on delivering and improving the advice, support, and guidance available to international counselors, teachers, agents, and other advisors. Prior to joining UCAS, Becca worked in various higher education institutions in the UK, in the international student recruitment, including in the Americas and also Europe, and she centralized university admissions teams. Without any further delay, I'll pass on the microphone to Sam for her presentation. Thank you, Sam.
Well, thank you so much for a lovely welcome and for having us at the event today. We're really excited to be here and to share with you what's going to be a very busy session, very busy update. So I'm going to just share my screen. We did practice, so the technology should work, but please let me know if there are any issues in seeing my slides at all. So a I'm just going to briefly outline what I'm going to cover in today's session. But as already has been said, we really want to give up a good amount of the session to your questions. So please do pose your questions, and we'll hopefully get to all of them later in the session. Really, what I want from the end of this session is for you to feel confident, firstly, how UCAS can help you, how we can help you encourage students to look to the UK to come for education. Also, how we can help you in advising those students. You might not be aware of the UK application process. You might not be aware of the UK education. You might only support a small number of applicants each year to applying to the UK. So hopefully we can make it clear the support we have for you as well. One of the key parts of today is to outline some of the changes that are proposed to UK admissions based off 2 key reports that were launched in 2021 and then updated in 2023. And that will include discussing some of the key reforms around references and personal statements. So, as I said, quite a busy session for us this afternoon. This afternoon for me, early evening, afternoon for everybody watching. I thought it would be really useful to start with a brief overview of who UCAS are. In the UK, UCAS is very well known because it's really the only way that students in the UK apply to go to higher education in the UK. You will be managing multiple application systems to many countries across the globe for your students who might be looking to study outside of their home country. And so how UCAS is set up, and UCAS is the University College Admissions Service. We are a centralised admissions service to support UK higher education. Unlike a lot of systems throughout the globe, we are an independent charity. And our key role is to provide impartial advice and guidance to anybody looking to study to the UK. For me, our ability and our goal to provide impartial advice and guidance means that we're able to support students who are looking to come to the UK in understanding what is the best course or university or college for them to study at. What we don't do is we don't make admissions decisions. So we are not responsible for deciding if a student is accepted or not accepted onto a course within the UK. That is up to the individual universities and colleges. We don't set things like entry requirements. That is set by the universities and colleges themselves within the UK. We provide support services and a hopefully transparent application process to come to the UK to study. That includes over 40,000 courses to about just over 380 universities and colleges within the UK. So lots of choice that students can choose from if they want to make the UK their destination for higher education. Another really important part of what we do at UCAS is use data and insights to help people understand trends within UK higher education and things that might be coming up along the road which might affect progress to come and study within the UK. So what we want to do is continually review the system here at UCAS and try to make it as easy and simple for anybody wanting to study in the UK to apply and understand what that process is. I wanted to briefly touch upon some of what we do with our data and insights because it's a really important part of UCAS, and much of our data is freely available to anybody looking to understand what is UK higher education like. The in-depth insights that we give will focus on things like popularity of courses, the different destinations of students, whether that be UK students, whether that be international students, whether that be EU or non-EU, whatever you as an advisor, counsellor or agent is looking to understand, we will usually have data and insights to help you do that. All of our reports and data is freely available on UCAS.com, and I'm just going to talk you through some resources that I often think as counsellors and agents or people who advise students don't often know is there, and don't often use to actually help inform themselves or inform what they're going to be advising their students to do. So I won't take too much time going into this in too much detail, but to me, it's a really useful part of what UCAS provides. And when I was teaching within the UK, I used to find what we would call the end of cycle data really interesting. So this is a look on what happened the year before. How did students progress into UK higher education? Which different routes did they use? How many? What numbers? Things have moved on slightly from when I was teaching, and it used to be a really thick, very lengthy report, which would often be quite long to read. We now have interactive dashboards available on UCAS.com, and that is available for anybody to be able to access and actually use if they wish. And what I've done is taken a snapshot of that dashboard to show you. So you can go in and have a look at the different data, and you can choose different categories that you'd like to view that data by. So perhaps you want to understand at what point different applicants applied to UCAS by our January deadlines, by our October deadlines. So those October deadlines are those early application courses. We've just had that first October deadline for the 2023 cycle. From that, that is live now on the dashboard. We can see that we've had a slight decrease in the number of international students applying for those October courses for 2023. We've had an increase in the number of UK 18-year-olds. So that's some trends that begin to be quite interesting when you look at them in the bigger picture. We will shortly be releasing all of the end of cycle data for 2023. So last year, the whole cycle. So you'll be able to look at that data and see what happened. What was the difference between the number of applications versus the number of people placed? So each year we manage applications from over 700,000 applicants. They can make each up to 5 choices. So that ends up being about 3 million individual applications if each person's using 5 choices. So that amount of data helps to create the trends that we're then able to share with people across the globe who are advising students. So if this isn't something you've seen before, I've included a useful link slide at the end of this presentation, and I'll make sure that this is sent on so that this can be shared with you if that's useful, so that you can go in and have a look at this dashboard yourself. Some people prefer to read a report. I know I do. It's my preference. And since 2021, actually before then, we have been releasing these next step reports. That takes over 8 million data points that we've got here at UCAS and shapes them into really useful, focused reports that can help shed some light on key areas you might be interested in. We've just shown a couple of examples here, of which I think one is particularly useful to everybody joining this afternoon, and that's our May 2022 report, which is what influences the choices international students make. To create these reports, we use our cycle data, so the application data that we receive, and we combine it with student voice. So what are the students saying? So they will answer surveys, and that creates a really insightful report that helps to create some key trends and examples, and often give tips and tricks, for me, I feel, for anybody that's advising students to understand what's happening across what we would say the higher education sector within the UK. So by bringing together this data and the findings from the surveys, it will explore an experience. And that's so insightful, really, is understanding the experience. The data's great. I love data, but it's interpreting that data to shape an experience. So what we saw from this May 2022 report, and I thought I would just share a few of the key findings, is that what we know is that international students look to come to the UK for education for a number of reasons. What is interesting is the difference in motivation of international students versus domestic UK students. So what we can specifically see is that the university or college that a student is applying to is of more importance to international students than it is domestic students. So UK students place more influence on the course that's being applied to, whereas international students want to know that the university that they're going to, that is of the key importance and driving factor for them. Students that are international also want to hear from international students. They want to hear from alumni. They want to hear from students that have studied at individual universities or colleges within the UK more. So over 40% of respondents that fed into this report said that their interaction with current students was key to their decision making. That makes sense when we're thinking about overseas and international study, but they're really, previous alumni, international alumni are real advocates for UK higher education and sharing that experience they've had. We also know that for international students, there's a difference in popular subject choices than for UK students. So international students favour courses that are in engineering and law. We've also seen an increase in the number of students wanting to work within spaces such as cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, computer science, and are twice as likely than UK students to choose courses in business and management. And those trends in subjects areas are really important when we're advising international students and looking for where there might be increased numbers of competition in certain areas. UK students, however, they tend to have more of a focus on things like healthcare-based subjects. So what we can see is that there's a slight difference in the types of courses that students are choosing from an international perspective. We also saw that for international students, choosing to attend what they view as a prestigious university, or what we would call a higher tariff university here at UCAS. So perhaps a university that has higher entry requirements. Again, there's a greater level of importance placed on that decision making than with UK students. We also see from this report how independent international applicants are potentially in comparison to UK domestic students. So international students are highly independent, with over half saying that it's their own research that's informing their choices and their decision making, as opposed to an influence from perhaps a school or a college counsellor or a parent. It's actually their own decision making factor and the decisions that they want for their future. So only 1% of those that responded said that a teacher or a named agent was actually influencing the specific university or college they wanted to. They're still being helped and supported, but it's the bit that's driving the decision making. And we also know that obviously there is a difference in cost to attend to study to the UK for an international student, and over 69% of those respondents were saying they would be self-funding their studies as opposed to perhaps seeking finance support or scholarship support, which is quite different to UK domestic students. So it's a really useful report. I hope you can see that with just some of the trends that I've pulled out. I think what is probably obvious to everybody on this call, but it's really key and called out in this May 2022 report, is how important cultural factors are in shaping that decision making. So international students are saying the ability to learn the English language within the UK is a big driving force for them wanting to come and study here, but also that a lot of them are looking to then continue on and work within the UK. In fact, being able to work in the country of destination for study was a driving factor in international applicant decision making. So if you only read one report, that's the one I'd advise you to read. It's the most up-to-date and really insightful. We have done other reports that you might find interesting, depending on who you are advising. Some of them are obviously quite a little bit more UK focused, but still very interesting. So I've listed some of them there for you, but and you can access them all on the UCAS website, and I have a link at the end of the deck for you. But I thought that this was a useful focus on how our report and insight and trends can support you in your role. I think another key thing that's coming out from UCAS at the moment is our forecasting. And again, I'd really encourage you to read our Journey to a Million essays, again, available on ucas.com. What is Journey to a Million? We are forecasting through looking at our data points, looking at the data that we have from applications versus acceptances each year, that by 2030, which really isn't actually that far away, we could be seeing up to 1 million applicants applying to UK higher education. As you can see there, this is being driven predominantly by appetite and demand within the UK from 18-year-olds and from international applicants. From our May 2022 report, what we know is actually international applicants often are within the 19 to 23 age range versus the UK 18-year-old demand. So there's sometimes a slight age difference between an international applicant and a UK applicant. But we know that growth overall to apply to the UK is being driven, as you can see by those predictions, within those two key areas: 18-year-old UK applicants and international applicants, with non-EU applications being core in driving up those numbers. So what does that mean for everybody? What does that mean for UK higher education, and what does it mean for you in your advising role? Well, increased numbers will increase challenge. I prefer personally the word challenge to competition, because it's about choosing the correct pathway. So for you in your role, it will be about access to improved information and advice and guidance for your students. It will be about signposting your students to more personalised support. And that's an area UCAS are focusing on, particularly with international applicants. A growth area for us is to look at how can we make our information, advice and guidance more personalised for international applicants and indeed international advisors, so counsellors, agents, teachers. How can we better support you all in able to signpost your students to what they need? It does mean looking at those choices. So what we do see is that applicants who want to apply to what we would call a higher tariff university, so that might be a university within the UK that's asking for higher levels of entry requirements, that actually potentially reviewing the number of choices and how they are used. So whereas before applicants might have made 5 highly competitive applications, so they might apply to 5 UK institutions that are very similar, very competitive, very selective, that actually balancing those choices and having 3 that are maybe very competitive and 2 that are a bit more realistic, perhaps more of a backup option. I think for international applicants, it's again growing the awareness that we have over 380 universities and colleges within the UK that can be applied to. And all of them will be offering fantastic educational experiences that can support that international learning experience that applicants are after. So it's about understanding the breadth of choice that's available and encouraging applicants to not apply to 5 universities that are all very, very similar in terms of being very competitive and selective, to ensure that off those 5 choices, they are potentially made an offer. So as challenge increases, we will see greater numbers. They will be undoubtedly saturated within the selective institutional market, and therefore applicants will need to consider more broadly where they are going, and perhaps I would say spread the risk of those 5 choices. If you have 5, Don't apply to 5 that are exactly the same. Spread the risk with where you're applying. Now, to support everybody in understanding what Journey to a Million really means for you in your role, we have released a series of essays from key contributors within the UK higher education market. And this includes the director of UCAS International, Chris Kirk. He has produced an essay on what it means for international applicants. And we also have vice chancellors from universities commenting. We've got other commentators on UK higher education. So again, I'd really encourage you to connect with our Journey to a Million essays and think about what it means for you in your own role and how you're advising students. This is to say it's fantastic that we've got this demand. It shows how good UK higher education is, and what we want is for applicants to be able to understand the market when they're applying, to give them the best chance of being able to progress and study here in the UK. So again, I hope that some of that data and insights is useful for you in understanding what's happening within the UK. Now, one thing that I've been asked to update on, and I think it's really important for everybody's practice and how they're advising students, is how we are shaping admissions within the UK. So we've had 2 reports that have been released in the last few years, which have been about reimagining UK admissions. The first was released in 2021, and it was off the back of a UK government consultation. The UK government were saying, do we need to change the model of UK admissions? So the first report, released in 2021, was discussing the potential of moving to a post-qualification model, which many of you will be more familiar with from other country routes that you might apply to. The UK is obviously not a post-qualification model. We use predicted grades in order to make offers and sort of process that decision making. That's often a barrier for you as an advisor or a counsellor when you're working with subject tutors or parents who perhaps don't understand the concept of a predicted grade. So the model that was proposed, or the post-qualification model was put forward, and UCAS responded to that government consultation. And what we said was that although students could apply post-qualification, that actually that model in terms of UK market wouldn't be supportive of the qualification model that we currently operate, and wouldn't necessarily function for students in England or Scotland or Wales. And it would also heighten perhaps the confusion and disparity for international applicants. Our response to the UK consultation was backed up with the fact that 74% of providers also wanted a single process and model for all applicants. They didn't want to operate 2 models. They wanted one consistent model. We also saw with that actually a longer lead time, a longer decision-making process. If you think about the current process, it starts well over a year in advance to apply to the UK. But actually that longer lead time and build up, those additional touch points with universities and colleges actually meant there was more success and there was less dropout rate for students. They were more committed to the choices they were making, and they were going in more fully informed. They weren't having to make decisions so quickly on receiving results and then applying. There was also downsides to this post-qualification model from our perspective. Was we obviously run a process called clearing each summer. We know that clearing is about actually decision making for students now. It's about them being empowered to make the choices that are important to them. Students change their mind, any student, UK or international. This changes might happen and they might want to go somewhere else. So having this option and this route clearing empowers applicants to make better choices. We also discussed in this response, in this report from 2021, that if international students were brought into this, it would cause additional problems and even more squeeze the period of time for visa applications, which could potentially deter applicants from the UK market. We already know it's quite tight for a lot of students, but it could further squeeze that process. And it also meant students who sometimes use our model in the UK with conditional offers as a bit of a security network, or they might apply to the UK amongst other application models across the globe. It meant that they actually sometimes preferred that conditional offer making, that they had something to aspire to, that they could continue focus in their education to continue achieving. We know that obviously in some other models, that's not the case. Once you've received an offer, that's it. And so for some curriculums, timings, that doesn't work. And actually applicants can sometimes lose focus in their studies. And that doesn't happen with the UK model because of this conditional element. You need to get these grades in order to attend. We also responded to say that this post-qualifications model that was put forward was very UK-centric. And again, just in addition to all the things I've outlined, really didn't support growth from international applicants. And we also felt would disadvantage potentially all applicants in decision-making process. So we proposed back some alternative models in our consultation document. Now, in the midst of this consultation happening from the UK government, there was a change of government and a change of leadership. And so subsequently what happened was post-qualification discussion was taken off the agenda at that point. So we were left in a position where one model had been proposed, UCAS put forward some alternative models, and then the conversation was stopped in terms of changing the admissions process at this kind of whole UK level. However, what we did at UCAS was we said quite clearly there is a requirement for change to the UK admissions model. So we released our subsequent report 2023. So it was this January 2023 that we released an update. So the future of undergraduate admissions for 2023. This is about what UCAS feel we can do in partnership with the sector, so in partnership with universities and colleges in the UK, to improve the experience for students, to make applying to the UK easier, to make it more transparent, and to enable all applicants, UK or international, to understand what's required of them on the application, but also, really importantly, signpost them to really helpful and personalised information, advice and guidance. So the top areas that came out of this report, probably as no surprise, because what I'll talk about in a little bit, but also changes we've actually implemented, was a change to the reference structure, which I'll go through in a bit more detail in just a second. Personal statement reform, which I will also give you an update on, but also personalisation. Now, there was another key impact that came out, which was what we call in the UK widening participation, but that's very UK focused. That was about broadening out the types of schools and colleges that people are applying from within the UK. So you can read about that in the report. I have left it out of my update to you this afternoon because it's less relevant to the international market. What was key from this for all applicants is increased personalisation. So better personalised advice and guidance when you're on the UCAS website, and improved support within the application form, particularly if I am an international applicant. We know areas such as the education section and the residency and nationality section are challenging for international applicants to complete. So what can we do to improve that in-cycle experience and the application experience for all applicants, but particularly looking at for international applicants, how can we make that easier? And we've already committed to some changes that will be happening for 2025. So we are looking at improvements that can be made in the education section, specifically to make it easier for international applicants to input qualifications, and also better advice and guidance around things like residency and nationality, and also English language requirements as well. So they're small changes that will be to do with things like help text and the fields. I don't have anything to share at present because it's currently being scoped out, but those small changes, incremental changes to improve the experience for international applications will be taking place from 2025. And we will, of course, be sharing this in things like the UCAS International Advisor newsletter, which you can sign up to at ucas.com/advisors. But I have a whole host of resources to share with you anyway. So please do watch that space. We also know that personalization to do with things like entry requirements is also really helpful. Now, we will be releasing something called the Entry Grades tool, and that will be launched next year. To begin with, this is only going to start by focusing on key qualifications such as A-levels, and that will be the starting point. So we have the highest percentage of applications coming from qualifications such as A-levels. So for international applicants, to begin with, the Entry Grades tool might not be useful for them, or might not incorporate the qualifications that they're studying. But this will be developed over time. To run something like that, we need enough data on certain qualifications and how they progress to different universities and colleges. But we will be looking at how we can encourage universities and colleges to give more detailed entry requirements on their course information pages on UCAS as well. I think at this point it's really important to, I'm sure everybody does know, but to remind everybody that universities within the UK have fantastic international student recruitment teams who are very often region-based. Becca and my team has joined us from one, and work very hard to understand the qualification profiles of different territories across the globe. So if we don't have it on the UCAS website, it's absolutely go to the individual universities your students are looking to apply to and asking them that question. Because as I said at the very start, universities within the UK make their own entry requirements and make their own admissions decisions. So that is that's a link that's really important, is you as an agent or counsellor with the individual universities and colleges as well. So that is three of the key areas that came out of that undergraduate 2023 admissions report. Again, available on ucas.com in our reports section for you to read if you would like to. But obviously now what I'm going to do is just touch upon probably what is two of the biggest changes that are likely or have been implemented and then potentially will be implemented. So I'm going to start with references first. References were changed for the 2024 entry cycle. So this cycle right now, it has been changed. Before I talk about those changes, I just wanted to remind everybody on the call that there's actually two ways of providing a UCAS reference. Some of you joining me this afternoon will be from what's called a UCAS registered centre. That means you have applied to UCAS to become a registered centre, and you will be managing your students' applications through our tool called the Advisor Portal. You will be checking applications, adding predicted grades, completing a reference, checking their personal statement, and ultimately you will be responsible for sending the applications to UCAS. So some of you will be a UCAS registered centres, some of you won't be. And if you're not a UCAS registered centre, then you're likely to be supporting applicants who are applying to UCAS, how we would phrase as an independent applicant. That means they will go into the application themselves. They will complete the reference section in which they will name a referee and contact details. And then that referee will be sent an email from UCAS to say, you've been asked to provide a reference for this applicant. And then you are given information on how to log into a different kind of gateway to provide that reference. So they are the two different reference processes. And I think some of this different way of providing a reference for international applicants with the reference changed has caused some of the questions. The reason being, there is a slightly different section 1 depending on how an applicant is applying to UCAS. So if you are a UCAS registered centre and you are supporting applications in the advisor portal, then you will be providing that first section, which is a general statement about your school, college, or centre. So this will be information like the students that you support, how many progress on to higher education potentially within the UK, the demographics of the students that you're supporting. You might talk about the curriculums that you offer at your school or college. So whether you do offer international baccalaureate, UK A levels, your own domestic qualification, a high school diploma, for example, and that can really vary on what curriculums are offered internationally. So that would be if you are applying if you are a UCAS registered centre and you are completing references in the advisor portal. If you are supporting independent applicants, so perhaps you are an agent who is not a registered centre, perhaps you are an independent counsellor, you may well be supporting independent applicants, in which case section 1 is about you providing an overview of your relationship with that applicant. So it's slightly different. Now, you might be from a school or college and you could include that sort of same information, or you might just be providing how you know them and why you're a suitable person to complete their reference. There is guidance on ucas.com/references about both routes and what to include. That section 1 is the only difference in the reference. Section 2 is about extenuating information or personal circumstances that might have affected an applicant's performance. Now, this is optional. So you can complete the reference and not include this. And for most applicants, there won't be anything to put in section 2. This is about calling out anything really specific that's impacted that educational journey of that applicant. It could be about bereavement. It could be about personal circumstances. It could be about a health condition. We know at UCAS that often including personal information like this for international applications particularly can be against what's considered information you would want to share with a university or college. It seems that it would impact decision making. All I can do is reassure you all that that information is used to support applicants moving into UK higher education. In UK, it cannot be used to make an academic decision and isn't used to make an academic decision. It's there to say, okay, this student might require extra support in coming to the UK because, or it's used to put their achievement into context. And I think context is the most important word when it comes to a UCAS reference. A UCAS reference is very different to other application processes across the globe. This is about putting academic achievement into context for the applicant. So if there is anything that's affected that, they've had to overcome any challenges, it's important that it's stated. It needs to be done with the applicant's consent, because under UK data protection law, any applicant can request a copy of their entire application if they wish to do so. And that could include the reference. So if you're including anything personal about a personal circumstance for an applicant, you do need the applicant's consent to do that. Other things that we've been asked about to do with section 2 is, will it go against my student if I include personal information? Hopefully what I've said about how it's used within UK law will reassure you on that. But we do have full frequently asked questions available online, particularly if you need to work with colleagues or share this information amongst your school or your counsellor network. The last section is section 3. Now, again, this is optional because there will be some students where you simply might not have any information because perhaps you're not, despite saying to the applicant, I'm not the best person to do your reference, they haven't changed that. I think it's unlikely that if you're completing a reference, you would have nothing to say in this section. So this is the opportunity to talk about an applicant's academic experience, or if they are an older applicant, perhaps any work experience that they've had within that area that makes them suitable for the course they're applying for. So this might be about academic achievement in certain subjects. It might be about something that they've done that's hasn't already been touched upon in the application. So perhaps they've had an achievement that they've not already stated. I think it's really important at this stage to call out that the personal statement is still the primary place for an applicant to advocate for themselves. So if they're talking about experiences they've had or achievements that they've succeeded in, it's always better coming from the applicant, because they can draw out what they've learned from it and why it makes them suitable for the course. In both the reference and the personal statement, one of the key differences between the UK application and other global applications is the focus on the course. So both the personal statement and the reference should be very course focused. How does it make the applicant a better candidate for the course that's being applied for? And that's where research is really important on the student's behalf. Have they understood what that course really is? I think in terms of the reference, we have been getting feedback from people to say they really welcome the change. They're really happy about the change. They think it's definitely clearer and more focused. In terms of the style, the new structure is definitely about writing in a much more concise way, being very focused on the course being applied for. Before, we would read references that were perhaps written in a different style, very focused on lots of things about maybe an applicant's character or personality. You might want to briefly touch upon that, but really it's about focused on the evidence for applying to the course within the UK higher education sector. And a number of universities and colleges have put their own guidance out as well on what they're specifically looking for. Now, what I think is important to call out is that in terms of anything to do with the UCAS application, different universities and colleges apply different weightings to different sections. So what I mean by that, some UK institutions will make academic decisions entirely based on academic achievement. So previous achievement with qualifications and predicted grades. That is how they make their decision. Others might use the personal statement as part of their academic decision making. So they'll rely on academic achievement and the personal statement. Others might not use the personal statement to a greater extent. Some might use the reference as part of their decision-making process. What we have heard, though, is that no student will be disadvantaged by not having information in a reference. So you need to not worry about leaving things out. The aim of the reference, as I've said, is to provide that context and to provide concise statements that help UK institutions understand that student and why they might be suitable for the course being applied for. Common questions that we've got over 40 frequently asked questions that we've now put responses to on ucas.com/references. But some of the key ones, as I said, what if my student has no extenuating circumstances? That's section 2. So what if there's nothing to put? Fine, great. There's nothing to put, don't worry. You mark it as no other information to provide. The provider, so the university or college, knows that you don't have any information to provide and it won't go against the student. So essentially my reply to that is, will it disadvantage my student if I don't put something in section 2? And my response is, well, what will you put? If there isn't anything to put in there, there isn't any personal circumstances to share or anything that's disrupted that educational journey, then you don't have anything to put, and that is okay. Are we considering more changes to the reference? That is a comment we're getting. Rest assured, we are reviewing this first year of this new structure. Change is always difficult. We've heard lots of feedback and we are taking that on board. We will be releasing a survey early next year to all advisors, and we'll make sure we share that amongst our networks as well, to get the experience of advisors, counsellors, agents, teachers on the new structure. We will be looking at if we need to enhance anything like information, advice and guidance. And we are always working with our university and colleges on the UCAS scheme, our partners there, to say, what are you looking for? And are you being clear enough in your own website and communications of these changes as well? We are not looking at changing the reference process for UCAS conservatoires. So that's a different process altogether, where they require 2 references, one from an academic and one from their music or performing arts teacher, for example. That process, the UCAS conservatoire process, is not changing. Can you update the reference after the UCAS application's been submitted? Is a question we get all the time. No is the answer. So once the UCAS application has been sent to UCAS, you cannot change the reference. The only way to update universities and colleges is for either you as the advisor, agent, counsellor, to get in touch with all of the 5 choices directly, or for the student, if there was an error with an independent reference, to do that. But we can't do it through the UCAS process. How long should the reference be is a question we get all the time. So it's up to 4,000 characters, but I need to be very clear that that includes headings. So the section headings is included in that. Lines, so spaces, and character breaks. So it isn't words, it's characters. And it does include headers, spaces, and any breaks that are put in by whoever's writing it. For me, I think it's important to reiterate, we are trying to push towards more concise references that focus on key information. So that's not a target, it's a limit, and you can absolutely expect to write less than perhaps in previous years. Again, we are looking at references this year and how we can support advisors continuing to move forward in future cycles. And as I've said already, will anything disadvantage your student? No. And rest assured, we know that if a university or college feels they need something more, that perhaps there's something missing from the applicant or the application, they will reach out and ask for additional information. We know that they do that already, and we are reiterating to them that as we move through this cycle of change, to everybody to keep feeding back on the process. So hopefully those changes are clear. I did just want to highlight the support that we have for you to manage these changes. If you've not already seen our references support page, oops, sorry, I've clicked on a bit quick there. Please do bookmark this UCAS page. We've got examples for each section of the reference. We've got a PowerPoint presentation with each section broken down into a lot more detail so that you can share with colleagues in your own schools, colleges, centres, because you might be responsible for training up your colleagues. So that's there for you as well. We've got those FAQs, as I've said, for each section of the reference. We've also got 2 webinars that we ran in April and May that are deep dive sessions. So they are nearly an hour long, where we are just talking about each of the sections of the reference. So I'm hosting that alongside Kim Eccleston, who is the head of reform and strategy at UCAS. So has been key in driving forward these changes. So please do catch up on those deep dive sessions if you haven't already. You can just watch those on demand, and please do share with colleagues and your own networks. And we've also got an online course. Just to be clear, there's nothing different in the online course that's on the web pages. It's just a different formats. People like to learn in different ways that's available, which covers some of the key changes. But it's not any additional information. It's just presented in a different way. So hopefully that is of use to you as well. Now, we're coming to the end of my update, and we'll have obviously time for questions. I'm sure, well, I hope that there's lots of questions, unless I've just been so clear and comprehensive, there are no questions. But personal statements is the last thing I really wanted to update you all on. So you will have heard the personal statement is also being looked at for reform. Firstly, what's the point of the personal statement within the UCAS application process? Well, we've done lots of research on this, and there's many reasons why it's really important. Firstly, the most important thing from the research that we've done is it really helps applicants to think about the choices they're making, to understand the course they're applying for, and to decide if that's the right choice for them. And I'm just going to remind everybody how we started this afternoon out. Increased challenge and competition for UK places. So more, as I said, more kind of thoughtful decision making, spreading the risk of those choices. And the personal statement is key to that decision making process in writing it and understanding. And remember, the personal statement for UK higher applications is very course focused. It's different to other global applications. It's very about the course being applied for, why they want to study it, what skills they've got, what knowledge they've got, and what they hope to achieve by studying that course, for example. It's the only part of the application form the student's got a voice. It's their why. Why should I be picked for this course? It is a chance for them to showcase how non-academic achievements, often called supercurricular or extracurricular. So supercurricular is often academic links, so it might be additional academic study. Extracurricular is more like sports clubs, performing arts clubs, for example. It's a chance to show how they've learnt skills in those areas that will make them more suitable for UK higher education and study. So perhaps it's they've learned independence, perhaps they've learned to communicate with others of different ages, perhaps they've learned time management. So it's not just that they've done those, it's what they've learned from them that's important. It's also often used for some courses that interview or audition. It's used as a starting point for some of those questions. We know how much applicants value this. So 89% of people that have sort of fed into our consultation on the personal statement have said they see the value of the personal statement. However, it doesn't stop people being stressed by writing it. It's a very stressful process, and often it's about understanding what is the intention. So what we know is that the personal statement is really fundamental to the student decision-making process, and it's a really important part of the application process. But we do know that actually it can be difficult for students to know how to actually go about writing it. And particularly for international applicants, because it's very different to other application processes, the kind of focus on the course, motivation for course study is quite different. That balance is slightly different. So what we are looking to do is we are looking to reform the personal statement, not remove it. So that's fundamentally number one. The personal statement is staying, but it's to change it and to give better guidance to applicants in what they need to include in the personal statement. So I'd like to emphasize, firstly, the personal statement is staying. More importantly, there will be no changes to the personal statement until 2026 entry. So what that means is it's not this year. So students currently applying, personal statement stays the same. Students next year, so for 2025 entry, it is staying the same. Personal statement will be the same. It's for those students looking to start a UK higher education course in September 2026. So they will begin that application process in 2025, but it is for those looking to start September 2026. So I hope that's clear. Sometimes the language of cycles can be quite confusing. So it will not be this year. It will not be for students next year. It will be the following year, those who are going to start in 2026, that the first changes we are looking to implement. However, the final decision has not been made on what that will look like. So the feedback that we've had is, yes, breaking it down and giving clearer guidance on what's required is key to making the personal statement easier for people to understand, to know what to write. we know that they rely heavily on people to support them writing the personal statement. And so for international applicants who might be independent, as we heard, very start of the presentation, we know international applicants are often a far greater level of independence on research and completing applications in some respects, that we hope that this will help them feel more in control of that process. At the moment, it's being discussed breaking the personal statement down into key areas similar to reference, but that has not been confirmed yet. The areas that we know are key to the personal statement will be things like motivation for the course. So why do you want to study this course you're applying for? Preparedness for the course. So what have you currently done? What learning have you already done? What things do you do outside of the classroom or outside of your academic study that might be related to a hobby or an interest or an achievement? So how are you prepared? Skills and knowledge for that course. And then, what transferable skills you might have for that. And then preparation through other experiences. So we know not all experiences come from the academic, so being able to relate that. So those are 3 key areas: motivation for the course, preparedness for study based on the academics, and then other experiences. Those are the 3 key areas that we know everybody that's fed back into the consultation that was run earlier in this year have said those are key. But what we have not done is determined exactly what this will look like or how it will be presented. So what will we be doing next? Well, our user experience team will be reaching out for further engagement over the coming 12 months to look at what that will be like. If any of you read the report from 2023, you'll know that we've actually pushed back delivery of this to the 2026 entry, and that has been based on feedback from the consultation that we ran earlier this year. So in order to help everybody be prepared for these changes, it will be no earlier than the 2026 entry. In order to stay up to date with all the changes that we've got at UCAS, I think it's really key to understand what support we've got for you. So if you are not already a UCAS registered centre, I would really encourage you to explore becoming one. Not only will you have access to the advisor portal, so that's where you can manage applications. You'll also be able, through the advisor portal, to access real-time tracking of decisions and offers of your students and have oversight of that application process. You'll be able to manage the reference and the predicted grade process through the advisor portal. And then, as I said, see those provider decisions once an application's been submitted to UCAS. So you can really help inform and shape the decision-making of the students. You'll also receive support and guidance from us. You'll receive our newsletter. You can sign up to receive a newsletter from UCAS, but we obviously have operational newsletters as well for our registered centres. And you'll have access to our advisor help team as a registered centre, where you can come to get UCAS application questions and queries answered. They're available on hand. It's our kind of customer facing team for all our registered centres. If you're interested in becoming a UCAS registered centre, you can find information on ucas.com/advisors. But as I said, we'll put all of the key links in the end of this presentation for you to find. I think in addition to becoming a UCAS registered centre, there are resources that anybody can make use of. You don't have to be a UCAS registered centre to be supported by us here at UCAS. And I just wanted to highlight some key things that we've got, which you might want to look into having. So we've just relaunched our UCAS widget. What is this? Well, it's a little thing you can host on your own website, which will help signpost applicants, potentially parents, or anybody else that you might think needs to be in the know of the UCAS process, straight to key parts of our website. I love the UCAS website. It's a fantastic source of information, but it's big. It's really big. There's loads of information on there, and sometimes for international students and advisors, finding the bits that are relevant to you can be tricky. So this widget is great. There's full instructions on how you can download it, the technical guidance available, and this is completely free to download and use. So please do look at exploring that, because I think the widget for me is a really great tool that you can use to support anybody looking to apply to the UK for higher education. It's really intuitive, and we will be looking at updating that regularly. Once you've installed it, you don't need to continually update it. I'm not sure how the tech works, but I've been told it does. And this is something that we had historically, so I'm delighted to see that it's been updated. We also have, again, anybody can access the 2024 cycle toolkit. So each year we launch a toolkit, and it's there to support anybody advising applicants applying to the UK higher education. So you do not have to be a registered centre to access this, and I would really encourage you to have a look if you haven't already. So firstly, we have the advisor guide. Now, this is written for people who are UCAS registered centres. However, the advice and guidance is useful for anybody. There'll be bits in that won't be relevant if you're not using the advisor portal, but much of it will still be very helpful. So I would absolutely encourage you to access that. You can also download presentations, resources, posters and maps that you can download, that you can use in your own college, school, centre, and also you'll then have access as well to all of the advisor lives that we run. So we run monthly operational updates for all international advisors. They're free to register for, and you can watch on demand all of the previous ones we've run. And you can access those through ucas.com/advisors. So please do have a look at all of that support that we've got available for you. And that is whether you're a registered centre or not. And as ever, my team are here, the digital learning team, but also our advisor help team as well if you are a registered centre. Now, apologies, I have run slightly over in terms of information, but I'm happy to now take questions if we do have questions. What I will do is stop sharing my presentation.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you very much. We have planned to end the session by 1:15. So we have a few minutes for questions and answers. And I encourage you to share your questions if you have. Sam is here to address them and to help us understand a bit more and use get the most of this opportunity with UCAS. Sam, we have two questions at the moment. One is, after having an offer through UCAS, can the university change their mind on accepting the student? And the second one is related to IB. I think it was in the moment when you were talking about the reviewing in the admission process. So I think the person is asking if the IB curriculum is part of this discussion on the reviewing of the admission process. And let's see if you have more questions. You can please address these two.
Okay, so I'll start with the International Baccalaureate question. So the IB is often it's one of the key international qualifications that we know applicants often have. It's currently included in a number of the tools that we have available on ucas.com for students. So such as it is tariffed. So International Baccalaureate receives UCAS tariff points. It's the only international qualification that is tariffed. And I think on that point, just wanted to quickly talk about the UCAS tariff. Just because a qualification doesn't have UCAS tariff points does not mean it isn't accepted by UCAS providers. So if most international qualifications do not you can't use it on the UCAS tariff calculator, for example, and that's where the connections with international student recruitment teams or looking at the international pages of universities is really important, because they will list in detail what they're looking for specific international qualifications. But yes, the International Baccalaureate, it does receive UCAS tariff points, and as we look forward to developing tools, we usually start with qualifications where we receive the most applications from. So I imagine that the International Baccalaureate will certainly be within the early phases of that entry grades tool. Again, those kind of final details are still being discussed prior to launch. But if it's not in the first iteration of the product, it will certainly come I would imagine relatively soon. And I've forgotten the first question. Could you please repeat it?
Yes, of course. The first question was, after having an offer through UCAS, can the university change their mind on accepting the student?
So that would be what we would say unlikely. And if it happened, you could certainly let UCAS know. So once an application and once an offer has been received, it should be received with clear conditions of an offer. They might be academic conditions, so you need to achieve this grade in these subjects, and sometimes they can be non-academic conditions. So that might be to do with having visa information. It might be to do for some courses with having medical information provided, for example. But the condition should be clear. If it's not, then a student or an advisor should go back to that university and say, the condition of this offer is not clear. Only if an applicant doesn't meet a condition could an offer then be, could an applicant be made unsuccessful if they are given an offer. Obviously, the process is once an application's been received, a university can say you're unsuccessful, but when an offer has been received, it should be clear what that offer is, and it should not be withdrawn by the university or college unless there's clear reasoning or a reason why perhaps the information provided was incorrect. So if you're in any doubt as to whether if a university has made an offer and then rescinded it, if you're not sure if that should have happened, then please do email the advisor help team and we'll be able to support you and have a look into that. But no, once an offer's been made, it should stand until an applicant's met or not met the conditions of that offer. So I hope that's clear.
Thank you, Sam. There are a few more questions, but our time is up. So unfortunately, we'll have to end the session. But I will send these questions to you, and then you can
just quickly seen one question about the January deadline, which has reminded me. So the January deadline is the same, it's 31st of January for 2024 cycle. So for this coming January, we currently have a consultation out at the moment, which is about the dates and deadlines for the 2025 entry cycle. And it would be really great if as many of you could respond to that consultation. It's about, do we change the dates or don't we, following feedback from advisor communities and students and UK higher education. So I will ensure that when I send this presentation across, which can be shared with everybody, I'll include a link to that consultation. And if as many of you could fill that out as possible, that would be great. We've not yet made a decision as to whether any dates will change for 2025. So thank you for reminding me, but please do fill in the consultation.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam, for sharing your expertise and your valuable insights with us today. Thanks, everyone who joined this session. It's really great to have you here, and we hope you join the next ones. We'll be posting in the chat the registration link, so you can stay tuned to the next ones. And before we close, I just have a few reminders. I would like to encourage you to please sign up for the British Council training. Is a training for agents and counselors, free online, and you get a fantastic opportunity to enhance your expertise in the education system in the UK, learn more about the admission process and other aspects of the UK education. Additionally, we have a feedback form for you. We are also posting it in the chat, so please share with us your perspectives on this session. It's very helpful for us to plan the next ones. And as always, keep an eye on our emails. We'll be sharing with you notifications, the recording of this session, the next sessions available. So please join and share with your colleagues. We'll be happy to have you in the next ones. Thank you very much.
Maura, you are mute.
Also want to thank you, Sam, for bringing this great insights for us to help our work as advisors to higher education students. And I think this partnership with BELTA and the British Council is a great way for us to be updated. So thank you so much, Patricia, for organizing this, for being there for us all the time, and for your insights again, Sam. So see you the next session.
Thank you for having us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And any questions, I'll make sure I get them answered and sent over to Patricia to be shared.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Maura. Thanks, Desiree, and the team interpreters who joined us and helped us in this session. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.